Okay, just want to make sure the recording is on. Yes, okay. So welcome everybody for joining us for today, Earth Day. Happy Earth Day to everybody. Today we'll introduce Encompass a little bit. We are a local social enterprise, and I know we have a lot of friends from overseas today. As I just saw, we have some friends from Philippines. And then Civic Exchange, also our partner today in Sustain Hong Kong. They will also introduce themselves. And then we'll have a brief intro of what SDGs are, and I'm sure some of you are very familiar. And if you have a particular SDG that you like, please feel free to put in the chat room and let us know. We'll tell you a little bit about the history of Earth Day and why this is important. And then the third part will be the Restoring the Earth, which is the theme of Earth Day 2021. We'll talk about some Hong Kong example. And finally, we will end it with insights about informal waste picker in Hong Kong. It's a workshop we did earlier a few days ago, and we want to share with you what are some insights from that finding. So a little bit about myself. I'm Benita. I am the founder of Encompass Hong Kong. I also recently work in Earthwatch Institute, an environmental organization. I am passionate about scuba diving and the environment, and I'm very happy to be with you today and share with you what I know about Earth Day. So a little bit about Encompass. We are a social enterprise that established 2.5 years ago. We do a lot of experiential learning program here, and the picture here is a TEDx Encompass Hong Kong, which we did on the climate change last year as with the countdown theme. Our mission is really to help institutions, whether they're corporate, school, university, for the UN SDG. And just to give you a flavor of what we do climate change program quite a bit. We have done climate change on pandemic and also wine and coffee, which is a topic I really like. We also do eco tour. We also have done climate justice and communication. We also talk a lot about biodiversity, and I think biodiversity is definitely important for Earth Day and the ecosystem health. We have also spoken about circular economy. So now pass to Fiona.
Hi everyone, good evening from Asia, from Hong Kong. So my name is Fiona. I am a program manager at Civic Exchange, and I mostly do communications and partnerships. So Civic Exchange is an independent think tank established in the 2000s by Christine Low, the former Secretary of the Environment. I also manage Hong Kong 2050s now. It's a Hong Kong-based platform for education, collaboration, and action on the climate crisis. So if you're interested, go ahead and scan the QR code, but do come back to this presentation. At Civic Exchange, we do in-depth research and dialogue to inform policy and engage stakeholders on addressing environmental and development challenges in Hong Kong. And with that, want to extend a warm welcome to my teammates from Sustain Hong Kong as well. So Rainbow, Disha, and Harrison. Yes, you can wave if you're the people. Sustain Hong Kong is a hub project that is part of Hong Kong Global Shapers community. It is a platform focusing on industrial level conversations, exchanges, bringing together change makers, influencers, and the public to inspire awareness, dialogue, and action on environmental sustainability. So as you can tell from the description and the mission, Civic Exchange and Sustain Hong Kong has quite a close collaboration. Similar to Encompass Hong Kong, we co-organized a TEDx Civic Exchange just late last year. Yeah, so that's the introduction. Back to you, Benita.
Yep, so SDG, I think some of you, it seems most of you are also working somewhat in the sustainability field, you will have heard of it. So they are universal, transformative and integrated goals to be achieved by the 2030. And for me, I think what's helpful is to look beyond just the goal, like climate change, we actually look at the targets, what that will mean. For today, we won't look at the targets specifically, but I think both Encompass and Civic Exchange have many of this kind of talks and events where you can learn more about SDGs. And I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram. It's called the SDG kick. It's one of my favorite diagrams. And on the bottom here is the planet goals. So to achieve the sustainable development goals where we have well-being and social equity, we actually first need to work on planet. So we need to look at climate, life below water, life on land, which is all the ecosystem goal, and also responsible consumption, another of my favorite goal. After the planet goals are fulfilled, you have the people goals. So you have the health, you have the education, you have gender. And then when people are happy, then you can look at prosperity. So you can look at decent work, industry, sustainable city, and all that. And finally is peace and partnership. So if you are working in the SDG field of sustainability, maybe use this framework to think about, like, it's kind of, to me, it's like a hierarchy, it's the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You need to fulfill the basic planet needs before you can achieve peace and partnership. I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram. I've recently talked about a little bit about that in Encompass as well. I think it's a concept that not broadly explored in Hong Kong. So perhaps for if you're not from Hong Kong, you might heard that in your city. It's developed by a Oxford researcher called Kate Wakeworth. And basically here you can see the ecological ceiling, the planetary boundaries we call, and the inner is the social foundation. So in order to have a sustainable planet, sustainable Earth, we need to make sure we are not exceeding climate change, biodiversity loss, and the thing in red is actually what we are exceeding the Earth already. The Earth is in a negative state, and the state in the inside is the social goals, and which is also mapped with the SDG. So I think there are more and more discussion on using donut economics, looking at city level. And even I have a friend in Taiwan, he was telling me some factories in Taiwan actually use donut economics as a measurement of how well the system works. So we won't go into this in detail, but I think it's an interesting framework, and I encourage you to read their website or read the book if you're interested to find out more. So I want to talk about the SDG Progress in 2019. This is APEC result, and you would be seeing that actually across East and Northeast Asia, as a region, we are not meeting the targets here that are set in 2019 in terms of all SDG. And in particular, we are particularly bad at the SDG Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. And I think that has a lot to do with our consumption pattern in Asia. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think the latest data in 2020 has come out yet. It will be interesting to see how COVID, which have turned our work upside down, how has that changed our goal? I mean, for some of you, you might have heard of the discussion is because of reduced carbon footprint, reduced factory last year because of COVID, we have cleaner air and all that. But I think there are also some research saying that we actually are not that much lowering the temperature. And I think Fiona will speak more on that very shortly. So this is my favorite diagram. For those who have been to my talk, you've seen that. So this is a research done by UNSDSN in Hong Kong in 2018. And they were surveying people, what are their favorite, what are their most concerned SDG is. And if you see Hong Kong as a region, you can see people care a lot about climate change. It's up there, 8.81. But interestingly, the least care about SDG, which I think is actually one of the most easy to do, is responsible consumption, SDG 12. So given Hong Kong is such a consumerism society, we do everything in terms of transport, food and all that, how much we can do that. So we'll have some tips for you in the end of today's talk. Oops. Okay, so Hong Kong, I think this number is rising. This is a data but from 2018. We have tons of waste. And the waste is, I think, is getting worse with the single-use plastic now with COVID. And in the later part of today's presentation, you will look at some waste statistic that we have gathered for our workshop. And you can see here the recycling rate is not very high as compared to other countries. So here's a question for you. I do want to make this engaging, and now let me launch a poll. So can you guess how many Earth we need if we everybody have a lifestyle like in Hong Kong? This is a latest data by WWF. So how many Earth we need if everybody adopts Hong Kong's current lifestyle? So it seems we have a mix of answers. Somebody said 3.2, somebody said 4.2. Okay, we have 2.2. Okay, the answer is actually 4.2. The 3.2 was an old statistic done by WWF, but according to the latest WWF statistics, we would need 4.2 Earth to sustain the Hong Kong current lifestyle. And our ecological footprint, as you can imagine, come from food, transportation, clothing, and all that. But this all, and if you're interested in calculating your carbon footprint, There's ecological footprint calendar by the EPD. You can count how much you can. So the Earth is not at a very good place, at least, and also Hong Kong people are doing not a quite good job. So we will look at some initiative to show that what have Hong Kong done in restoring our Earth. We don't want to end it in a negative note. So I'll tell you a little bit about Earth Day. Today is Earth Day, and I'm not sure how many of you in school or in your company have celebrated that. So basically, the story of Earth Day is back in 1969 at a conference in UNESCO. There was a peace activist called John McConnell. He proposed a day to honor the Earth and the concept of peace. He was proposing originally on March 21st. So not April 22nd, which is the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. However, due to some reasons, it has been pushed into April 22. The first Earth Day was focused on efforts in the US. It was estimated 20 million people from all demographic groups and political parties, as well as school, colleges, were bringing to attention to environmental issues. And because of Earth Day, it was reportedly that it helped the U.S. President Nixon plan to create the Environmental Protection Agency, which is the EPA, some of you know, in July 1970. So right now we're in 2022. There are more than 2 billion people who are celebrating Earth Day worldwide. And if you want to learn more about Earth Day, please go to the website earthday.org. There's tons of resource there. So if you're an educator, if you are wanting to learn more what the Earth Day means, please go to the website. So now I'll pass the time to Fiona.
Great. So since it's Earth Day, we can't, not talk about climate change. And you must be wondering why we're talking about it again. And as tiring and as depressing as this graphic is, it is so important to know where we are for the world, where we are in terms of climate change in order to devise a plan to tackle it. So let's have a really quick recap of what climate change is about. Global warming, a sister term to climate change, describes the warming of the globe. The current warming trend, however, is unprecedented and mostly caused by human activity, also known as anthropogenic emissions. So if we want to tackle climate change and this main reason for warming, we're going to need to be talking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which majority is made up of carbon dioxide. And as recommended by the IPCC, we should not exceed 1.5 degree of warming above pre-industrial levels globally. And as of 2019, we are at 1.1 degrees. So in order to limit our warming, we need to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Next slide, please. This 2050 net zero goal is so necessary to avoid irreversible consequences of climate change, which Hong Kong, as a city, is not immune from. We also suffer from implications of climate change like extreme heat, stronger storm surges, etc. And in Hong Kong, this requires an annual emissions reduction of 6.6% to achieve decarbonization. In 2020, last year, with a pandemic and a paralyzed economy, we're seeing roughly 7% decline in emissions globally. So in other words, in order for us in Hong Kong to achieve our goals, we need emissions roughly the same level as we saw this year. So without all the traveling, with all the businesses kind of shutting down. But we certainly don't want to have a pandemic every year to help us reduce emissions. So when everyone is freaking out about pandemic and that now means am I discrediting the devastation caused by this COVID-19? Not everyone is really aware of the urgency of climate change. In addition, the impact of the pandemic have illustrated the link between global environmental degradation and our health. So deforestation, wildlife trade, air, water pollution, etc., have all led to a breakdown of our natural systems, leading to this new fatal disease, such as the current pandemic. But like Benita has said, and as we could see in the poll, a lot of you have suffered from eco-anxiety, and we don't want to perpetrate this message that is all doom and gloom. That's why focus of today is about restoration, which brings hope. And it is so important, especially as we are recovering from COVID-19.
So now we'll talk about the theme, Restore the Earth, which is the theme for Earth Day 2021. There's a lot of text here. Don't worry about it. Just to tell you what are some statistics we can do in restoring the Earth. But I do want to mention there's this UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. The timeline is till 2030, and the aim is really to halt the degradation of ecosystem and to restore them. And the reason is because only by restoring the Earth, we can eliminate those global warming and really high number. And just to put things into some perspective. So for example, 20 to 50% of the global blue carbon ecosystem, meaning the very productive vegetative coastal ecosystem, such as mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrasses bed, have already been converted or degraded. And that could be due to habitat destruction and all that reason. And only restoring the wetland can only offer 14% of the mitigation potential needed to limit global warming. So restoring the Earth is not the whole solution, but it's part of the reason, part of the solution. And we'll show you a spectrum of what that means. And restoring also means create green jobs. And if you think about the interlinkage of SDG, it also means like decent work and economic condition. It also means sustainable cities. So it's definitely not a single thing on restoring the Earth. Excuse me. Again, this is an interesting diagram. It's called a Restorative Continuum. It's by the Society of Ecologic Restoration. I think the key message here is you can do something to reduce your impact. So for example, you can say no to plastic straw, or you can like buy recycled or bring your own recycle bag. This is some way for reducing the impact. However, this is only the first step. In order to repair and restore our ecosystem, there's a full spectrum. So this continuum highlight the interconnection among this different activity, whether it's reducing society impact, whether it's initiating nature activity, and it also recognizes the specific characteristic of the locality that is needed for restorative action that is best for a different landscape. So as you move from left to right, from here to here, what you can see is there's more ecological health and biodiversity outcome, and the quality and quantity of the ecosystem surface reduce. What do we mean by that? So some restoration process, such as reforestation, soil conservation, can store massive amounts of carbon, and we all know carbon is one of the problems of greenhouse gas. So again, this can get very academic, and we are not going to do that, but I think this is a good framework. Some principles highlighting ecological restoration, and I think this is true with not just restoration, but any environmental problem. You need to engage stakeholder, engage the citizen, engage like the farmer who are actually the stakeholder, engage the system. And I think in the Sustain Hong Kong team, we'll show you an example of how we do the stakeholder mapping in Hong Kong using that example. We also need information. We need to know how do we actually do that, and also set clear KPI. So I think the SDG and the donor economics, they are both very good framework to set what are some measurable indicators that we are actually doing what we need to do. And also we also need to realize that it's a part of restorative activities, and we will show you some example how restoration has been done in Hong Kong in a short while. And when you have that knowledge, how do we apply that in a larger global scale? So again, this is another very technical diagram, but it shows you like when you reducing impact, when you decline the causes, the ecosystem will bounce back. Ecosystem is very resilient. As we can see from COVID, after reducing all the carbon emission and all that, we see a lot more blue sky in Hong Kong. So ecosystem can bounce back. So after they bounce back, you actually enhance the native habitat. So you can do reforestation, tree planting, and all that good stuff. So to make sure that the green stuff come back. And then after time, you just need to give time. Any ecosystem, you need to give them time. And if you study biology, you would know this concept called succession, where different species will come back at different time when the ecosystem is restored. So just to give you some example, this is a graph from a researcher, Ray Bennett Yale, and you can see in the top diagram here, this is a degraded environmental system. And here the system when nature is restored. And for example, in Hong Kong, some of you might know Hong Kong Youth Swims have been working on some artificial reef system in Hoi Ha and different parts of Hong Kong, trying to bring back our coral reefs. Again, there are many examples across the world, but today we'll focus on examples in Hong Kong. So one of this example is oyster. I know a lot of you like eating oyster, perhaps in the seafood table. But I'm not sure how many of you realize how powerful oyster are. Actually, Hong Kong oyster is the most effective oyster filter out of all species. It can filter up to 30 liters of water per hour. And actually only 7 meters square of Hong Kong oyster reefs can filter the water that fill one Olympic swimming pool per day. However, we have lost 85% of the reef globally already. And I'm not sure how many of you have seen oyster reef in Hong Kong, but for more than 700 years, oyster have been a very important commodity in Hong Kong. But they are not only for food, but they are very important ecosystem engineer. So for example, a healthy oyster reef have 6 times more species than just a muddy flatland. Because of all this farming, of all this habitat destruction, we have lost a lot of reef. But it's not all doom and gloom. So Nature Conservancy has been working with researchers in Hong Kong U to work in 2 pilot sites in Lau Fau Shan. I don't know how many of you have been there, and also Tola Harbour, using discarded shell and trying to bring oyster reef back. So that's one example of local restoration. Here is a diagram from Nature Conservancy on what is the purpose of oyster reef. As you can see, it provides feeding ground, it provides denitrification, it provides shelter. Again, Nature Conservancy have a whole report on the oyster reef restoration project. Highly recommended if you want to learn more this as a case study. So we won't go into the detail of the science here today, because we have more interesting things for you to share about hearing from our friends at Sustain Hong Kong. Yes, and here just some example where in the Total Harbour they set up the settlement place. And if you are not familiar with this concept, is a lot of marine invertebrate like oyster, like coral. They have this stage called larvae when they were a baby. So in order for the baby to grow, they need a hard surface. So that's why there's this settlement place. They allow larvae to grow on it, so it becomes tiny oyster. So another example is in Kwai Tai River. So Hong Kong is used to be home of some of the rare species such as fireflies, and they used to be very common in the 50s and 60s. However, urban development and constructions the Kwai Tai River has destroyed most of the vegetation along the riverbank, and without the habitat, the insects go missing. So as an effort to restore biodiversity, the Drainage Service Department has led a river restoration project that introduced a variety of vegetation at the site. So for most animals, they need more than one plant. They need a rich ecosystem. So after that project was introduced, in 3 years, the restoration system has led to reappearance of more than 10 different organisms, and those include fireflies, beetles, frogs, butterflies, and all that good stuff. So it is now become the first urban green river corridor. Yeah, again, a very good example of some local restoration projects. And now, Fiona, your time.
Yeah, so similarly, DSD conducted a river revitalization project for the Kai Tak River in Wong Tai Sin. Wong Tai Sin used to suffer from flooding due to urbanization and exacerbated by climate change. DSD adopted 2 flood prevention strategy. That is the construction of you can see in the graph, a 400-meter box cover in the upstream river section, and the deepening of the riverbed to improve the drainage capacity. Also, DSD took this opportunity to integrate greening and to put some ecological elements back into the river, transforming this river into the Hong Kong's first urban green corridor. So as you can see in the left lower corner, that kind of flooding scene, we rarely see that in Hong Kong anymore. And I think we tend to take for granted people who are working behind the scene to keep our city afloat, literally. Be it, DSD, departments in the government, like private sector stakeholders, but also people from the informal sector, which is why, would like to pass the time to our team at SUSTAINHK Hong Kong to talk about waste pickers in Hong Kong who are informal recyclers.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, I'm Disha, and as part of the team with SUSTAINHK Hong Kong with Fiona, Rainbow, and Harrison, we started looking at just problems around Hong Kong that we saw day to day and like issues we could see and relate to. I think one of the things that came to our attention was obviously the recycling system in Hong Kong. We had a lot of questions, and I think one thing that definitely caught our attention though was the kind of inclusiveness of the various stakeholders, especially at the grassroots level, and how they're kind of fragmented, and there's a bit of a lack of synergy and collaboration between the different stakeholders involved in the recycling ecosystem. And so we were kind of keen to see how we can maybe try and integrate the kind of behind the scenes work these informal recyclers kind of really bring to the table and kind of represent them better, and kind of hear their voices and see what problems they have and how we can probably as a society come together and kind of help them. So I think one of we kind of came up with the idea of actually bringing various stakeholders together on the same platform in a design thinking workshop to really understand each other's motivations, to see where people are coming from, understand each other's point of view, and try and brainstorm potential, first find out exactly what the problems are, and then kind of brainstorm solutions to these problems together and having that representation across the board. So as part of this workshop, we invited 18 key stakeholders from various different entities, whether that's NGOs, government-led initiatives, grassroots organizations, waste pickers, and policy think tanks, etc., to get diverse views onto this problem of inclusiveness in this ecosystem. And we went through, various steps in the design thinking space, where we looked at stakeholder mapping to empathize and understand each other. We went through a human library experience where we actually heard from Wong Te, or a waste picker for non-English speaking folks, to kind of understand their experience and perspective. And we also then use the iceberg and the now, how, wow model to kind of narrow down the problem statement and also help come up with structured solutions to this problem. So a bit of background for everyone who's on this call, just a bit about, there's a survey done by the Waste Picker platform in the current kind of state of waste pickers in Hong Kong. So there's approximately 2,900 waste pickers in Hong Kong, and most of them are female and elderly, as I'm sure you've observed around. And they are actually responsible for 20% of the papers that's recycled in Hong Kong. And they do face various obstacles that was found from the survey, whether they have their recyclable materials or personal property stolen, to how the government is not actively pushing them away, not actively helping them, and kind of the general disrespect they sometimes do face. Just wanted to give that as a bit of background before we kind of move into like one of the first kind of things we did at the workshop, and kind of wanted to walk you through some of the things we did and how some of the things that came out of it. So I guess one of the things we want to highlight was kind of the stakeholder map. This is kind of to kind of visualize front to back the various entities who are involved in the recycling chain in Hong Kong. And we're looking everyone from like people who generate it to collectors to the whole transfer process of it, and also the treatment or disposal. So it kind of walks you through the whole life cycle of it. And it gives you a better understanding of the various entities involved. So obviously this is a mix of NGOs, citizens, government agencies, and both informal and formal recycling systems. Just moving on. So I think one of the key, things we had also at the workshop was a human library experience. This was to really hear from Wong Jie, what kind of day-to-day experiences she has, the problems she has, what her thoughts are, and to really understand from her. So I'll pass on to Rainbow, who will actually share some of the insights from her.
Yep. So this is Rainbow from the Stay Hong Kong team. After the human library session, we actually collected some inspiring code for you guys. Just to recap or just to show you guys. Yep. So once I said the reason of her being a waste picker is always about saving the environment. Money came after that, even though she has trouble to living and then eating for 2 meals, she still care about the environment. That's really impressed me. And she says she never pour water on the cardboard because it's actually downgrading the quality. So wet cardboard are lower in monetary value and hard to recycle. Harold Yip from Mill said, so there are some relationship or tension, you may say, between informal waste picker and FEHD staff, but they are not in conflict. So FEHD staff are also economically disadvantaged. So move to ideation, we use now how WOW model. Basically, this is like a tool to create some new ideas. So for the vertical axis represent the ease to implement, while the horizontal axis represent how innovative the ideas are. So for now, that box, we got provide alternative jobs for waste picker. So say janitor or cleaner. We also got making the recycling industry economically viable and attractive. For example, some companies in Hong Kong have been collecting high quality cardboard for moving purpose. So the values of those cardboards are maintained. So basically just reuse those boxes. For how we funded brand area planning. So it's difficult for waste picker to store their personal belongings or including recyclables on the street. So they might need to work on the pathway, or there's like a high risk associated because of the traffic on the road. So that might be something that we need to consider. For WOW, we funded educate citizens to respect waste picker, to treat their profession as normal job is quite important, because without treating, putting equal respect for them, the other things won't come after. So it's also interesting idea to point out some people mentioned to reduce the logistic costs. Recyclables can be centralized by district. So or we can hire the waste picker to manage the recycling bins instead of contracting out to the third parties. Okay, so we also got some insights from the workshop. In the fact sheet, we mentioned most of the waste picker are elderly. So the average monthly income is around $720 Hong Kong dollars. So in the workshop, we also discussed how often the government policies try to solve two problems with one stone. However, the effectiveness of such policies are quite low and unable to solve the problem, which linked to the next point that waste collection and treatment components usually contract out to third parties. So the poverty issues and aging society issues should be dealt separately. Also, the government establish the standard price for recycled paper. So some participants comment this act will disrupt the market. The recycling market should be a free market that depends on demand and supply, while this policy, the money mainly subsidize the collectors, but waste picker don't benefit as much. The last point that we got is unable to recycle the materials because they are not sorted properly. So there are mixed up types of plastic or recyclables. For example, for plastic, we got 9 types of them. Some of the recycling store don't unable to sort of them. So we also need to put individual efforts to sorting those plastic because the human cost of sorting is actually quite expensive. Yep. Pass to Harrison.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Rainbow. So my name is Harrison. I'm also part of the Sustain Hong Kong team. Obviously, on this slide, you can see survey results. And I think that's part of what we wanted to do is so for every participant who joined, we wanted to give them a pre-event survey and an after-event survey to kind of assess, them on a knowledge level, on a capacity level, and also on a mindset level. So if you look at the stats in the top left first, on the knowledge level, I think almost everyone would agree. I know that everyone took a lot away from the workshop. I think there are many insights that even I myself took it away from the first time, especially from the human library. For example, some things you just can't Google. For example, Wang Jie, the waste picker, mentioned, on the streets, they would sometimes have to face a struggle with, being in conflict with the government-run formal sector waste picker workers. They would sometimes even confiscate or steal their property, steal their entire trolley of collected cardboard after a whole day of work, and then just that's their entire day of earnings, right? So these conflicts exist, and I had no idea about that until she talked about it herself. Obviously, this is a very day-to-day kind of operational kind of insight. There are also other insights, for example, the wider stakeholder map, and so many more things that just go in day to day, And also early on the slide that the teacher kind of shared, I think there are some legal aspects to it that just don't kind of fully make sense in a very supportive and inclusive ecosystem. It's not fully inclusive enough, as in writing, the government would try to promote, a more diverse and inclusive area for waste pickers, having a mandatory or suggested $0.0 per kilogram of cardboard. But legally speaking, actually there are policies in place that says, if you actually move, pick, or store things in public space of waste, if you even pick them up, you are actually at the legal area, the scope for a criminal offense. You can get charged. You can get your trolley of cardboard being collected, confiscated. So I think on the knowledge level, a lot of people took away a lot of insights from it. Similarly, for design thinking and empathy tools, these are very process driven, and I think most people, because of our wonderful facilitators, we took a lot from feeling and doing instead of just listening, from just us presenting what the framework looks like, from the whole ideation, empathizing, everything we had to do, the exercises as well. And then lastly, on the mindset, I think you can read on the left, it's more about 2 parts. One is everyone's plays a role in the ecosystem. And also the second part, which is probably what's getting your attention, is the red color. The red color shows, we had a statement that says, do you agree that, waste pickers are experts, integral in the recycling system of Hong Kong? And obviously it's negative, as in it has not much change, or at least it's negative. And it comes to further question, obviously. And what do we mean by experts? What do people feel when they give this response? Are they saying, maybe they are alone, they don't have the enough capacity or knowledge to change the entire system? So is that a good thing or bad thing? So that's not, this type of result is not that it's a bad thing. It shows that waste pickers alone, just might not have enough knowledge or the capacity to change so many more things that we talk about, the grand scheme of the ecosystem. So there are many more questions that come out of it. Although Wang Jie is a great example of waste picking through because of environmental reasons, but what she also mentioned was that a lot of her peers actually water down the cardboard and just do it for more economical reasons, for very, very fair reasons. But obviously there's a diverse a variety of waste pickers with different motives. And I think everything should be taken into account if we really want to be inclusive and try to make some changes. And so that has to happen from an honest discussion standpoint. On the right, I think, just let me quickly translate that the Chinese passage for some of you. It basically, some participants, before they joined the workshop, they mentioned, I joined the workshop because I really wanted to know their day-to-day challenges and how we can improve their livelihood. And on the second part, someone once mentioned waste pickers, they are basically and essentially the front lines of the waste ecosystem. They are like heroes in a sense, and there's so much that they contribute. And that's why people want to join this workshop, to brainstorm ideas. And after the workshop, also in parallel, we just didn't have enough time to do more brainstorming, do more ideation. People really liked it. They really enjoyed the session. It was very hands-on, but everyone would suggest that it should be longer. So it was a very great session. So now, what's next and what can we exactly do for us, all of us in the call, day-to-day? Let me kind of move to the next slide and pass it on to the next speaker.
So yeah, I know after listening to Sustain Hong Kong and its sharing by Rainbow, Disha, and Harold, you must have a lot of questions. But hold that thought. Let me just close today's section, and then we will go to Q&A, and you can ask us any question on Earth Day, Restoring the Earth, or the waste picking system. So I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram. It's a diagram by IUCN. I think it's another way, kind of like donor economics, but using this is called a nature-based solution. And the idea is to protect, manage, and restore natural system, but also addressing the society and human being and biodiversity thing. So what exactly does that mean? It means there's some principles of the nature-based solution, and it could be embracing nature conservation norm, or determined by site-specific natural and cultural context that includes traditional and local knowledge. So that means when you're trying to restoring the system, or maybe when you work on waste recycling, try to take account to the local system, local stakeholder. So restoring the earth can mean, even if you're restoring the same habitat in different parts of the world, you might need to do differently to adapt the local context. And third is to provide a societal benefit that is fair and equitable. We won't go into very detail in this, but I think it's very interesting framework. And if you have some time, I would definitely encourage you to go to the IUCN website and to learn more about this method of helping out Earth Day. And I'm sure a lot of you here do already some of this. You can conserve water, you can drive less. I won't go into detail, but I think our job here is to practice that ourselves and also encourage people around us to have a sustainable lifestyle. So I'll end with this quote, let us green the earth, restore the earth, heal the earth. So hopefully by reducing ecological impact and like what the Wang Jie and her friends do to help reduce waste, and that's also like part of the circular economy, try to reduce the waste so we can really try to reduce our footprint, and that's the first step of restoring our earth. So with that, I'm going to end the official part of today's presentation, but we still have about 10-15 minutes, and I want to open the platform to anybody who want to ask us questions. You can just unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat room, and I'm sure one of us here is happy to answer you about any of what we discussed today. And if you have some question, I think what Harold and his team share here is very interesting. If you want to ask more about it, the insights we got from the workshop or other parts, or about work by Civic Exchange, please do ask us. So let me see if there's any question from the group. So I see Bondi have some comments on Philippines. I don't know if Bondi, you want to unmute yourself and maybe share what are some struggles you have, and maybe we can discuss as a group and maybe brainstorm here, since we have a very intimate and I think interesting group here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, as we have experienced here in the Philippines, we are really having some sort of struggle in implementing some sort of activities entailing mass gathering. That is precisely because of the restrictions set forth by national and local governments in terms of convening people. In fact, we could hardly proceed into some sort of empathizing with the stakeholders, in a sense that we are restricted in gathering them for the activity. In fact, we are limited to have not exceeding 10 person to convene in order to proceed with some sort of activities like that. So basically, we are really facing some sort of struggles in terms of implementing various project activities. Right now, I would just like to share we are implementing a development project, a DRRCCA related project, wherein we are working with communities, and we are supposed to work with communities in identifying their needed science and technology based interventions, and at the same time, after determining the needed science and technology based interventions, the project will come in order to provide those needed science and technology based interventions by the community. But as of now, we could hardly proceed with that because we cannot just simply go into the communities and do the survey, do the focus group discussion, because we are restricted with various protocols, pandemic protocols. Okay? So that's one of our sample experiences here in the Philippines. So that's it.
Thank you for sharing. I do understand, like, depending on where you are in the world now, gathering in person is very difficult. But I have participated in different stakeholder engagement workshop online as well. I know Alicia here and I are both resource mentors, and we can also do design thinking and stakeholder mapping online. It's definitely more challenging, but I think with COVID now, we just need to be a little bit more open-minded and creative in how we get feedback from other people. I certainly don't hope just because of the COVID, we stop everything about protecting the world and just, I mean, I'm not saying that the COVID is not important, but I think we still need to, share how what we can do with the world. And I know, for example, Lorna here, which always come to my seminar. She's also from the Philippines. So I think thanks very much for your sharing about your experience in Philippines. So yeah, I just want to ask anybody else, maybe from Hong Kong or anywhere, want to share about their experience in terms of restoring the earth, or if they have any question on our methodology in the stakeholder mapping.
Hello.
Hi.
It's just like, well, restoring the earth. We're just like those the activity that we are joining, Vinita, about the clean in green. We know that it's only a little scratch of the big, really, what do you call, the big idea of restoring the earth. We are far from the idealistic that we are putting in, but at least little by little. But the thing is, sometimes I do agree. It's not only now the pandemic, about what speaking from the Philippines, is the thing is what we call we are not very we don't maintain what we do. Sometimes we do, sometimes we are not. And then I'm just interested on the waste speakers that they are doing the research that they do about Sustain Hong Kong. It's just that those separation of waste that we are doing. Sometimes our waste speakers or our what's this, aunties, the one who are doing it, are not educated on how to segregate sometimes those waste. So it's just like, even though we are segregating, we are doing at the end point of it, it's not implemented. So and I'm quite very impressed. I learned a very nice thing today, Benita, on your presentation about the oysters. I will look into that furthermore, because I just shocked myself that, oh, oysters are not just oysters. Thank you for sharing that one.
Fiona or Harold, you guys have Harrison, or you have any feedback for Lorna about what she said?
Let me try to tackle this question. So I think what you're asking or what you're commenting is the waste pickers in the Philippines. They, even though the users or the waste producers, they segregated or sorted the waste, but they might all just lump it together and take it to whatever waste disposal process that you guys have in the Philippines. From what?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
It's even here in Hong Kong. I just observed. It's not like it's yeah.
I see. Yeah, because from what we've learned from the waste pickers that we talk to and the advocates for waste pickers community, they are in fact very knowledgeable in terms of what other waste that they can pick. And in Hong Kong, actually, there's another colloquial term for waste pickers that is cardboard grannies, because they mainly just pick up cardboards. And the way they do it, they can find these cardboards and know where to take them. They're very knowledgeable. In fact, they are almost like the experts in this field. So much so that we talk about them in the informal sector, and in fact, the government actually does provide the public service. So you will see sometimes in uniforms, there are people from the FEHD department. FEHD, they also pick up waste, but from what we hear, these informal waste pickers, they tend to go to the waste faster than anyone else. So they are very knowledgeable, very professional in what they do. The question for us, and the reason why we wanted to organize this workshop, is to see how we can integrate these informal waste pickers into the more formal recycling system, because they are doing a public service. Basically, they should be getting paid by the community, by our government, but they're not. And in fact, most of the times they earn very little in a day. They don't have enough to eat. They don't have a healthcare system to support them. It might seem like after this session and even after the workshop, we have more questions than answers for all of us. I think it's a great starting point for us to all think about how, comprehensively, how can the waste management system in Hong Kong to do better, to be more efficient. Yeah, so thank you so much for your question. And yeah, we'd love to hear more about if anyone has any personal experiences with waste pickers in Hong Kong or not in Hong Kong, in your own country. Feel free to share with us. We would love to hear more of how they're doing in other places.
Thank you, Fiona. I noticed one of my friends is here, and she's also doing very interesting work. I'm not sure, Alicia, can you unmute yourself and tell us the new Child Watch campaign? If not, I'm going to speak on behalf of you. Can you tell us your new campaign? Alicia, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry, I just had to unmute myself as per the instructions. Thank you very much, Benita, for calling me out on this. I work at an organization called Trail Watch. We combine hiking and physical activities, so going out to nature, with environmental protection and conservation. So just today, we launched a campaign. It's a waste audit. So basically, we are encouraging people to go out onto the trails and collect trash, but as they're collecting and cleaning the trails, to basically identify what they're picking up. It is not so easy because, as you can imagine, some of the things that you find on the trails are very, very small, but we've identified three common things that we hope people can collect, like plastic bottles, kind of like pandemic waste, I suppose. And basically, our intention is actually to collect some of this information, and by asking people to kind of recall what they've collected, take photos. We hope that it will raise more awareness about what kind of things that they're seeing on the trails. Some might be surprising, some may be things that you're expecting. And then at the end of this year, we hope that we can collect all of that data and actually share with the public and use that for almost like a citizens and science type of project in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Alicia. I think definitely that is a very good citizen science project for everybody to contribute and also identify ways, and very much related to what we are doing today. I know there's some similar program also for the divers to identify their ways. And if you're into diving, and you will know there's a lot of ghost net and a lot of problems on the sea, just like in the trails. So I think there are definitely different civil society or different groups who are trying different ways to help for a better Earth. So I'm mindful of time. We have 2 more minutes, and Hector said, "Nice to meet you. I'm usual of Chat Watch." Anybody else want to share? Maybe I know we have some maybe Jody from Canada, or anybody else just want to comment, feedback, or whatever you want to say in our last few minutes.
Well, good evening,
Hi,
I guess,
Jody.
to you. Good morning from me. Thank you very much. This has been extremely interesting. I honestly had no idea of waste pickers. That I've learned a lot this morning. So that was a great presentation. Thank you very much. I know you guys are all working very, very large projects, but on a personal note, I'd like to say that last year, my husband and I chewed up a bunch of our front lawn and planted a little mini meadow in our front yard, our south-facing front yard. So we have just this little biodiverse thing happening just in our front yard. Every little thing to help bees and pollinators, and just a tiny thing to help to make the planet a little bit better. So we're trying to do our part on a very, very small scale, just at home. But it's wonderful to hear about all the very large projects that are happening worldwide.
Yeah, I think definitely there are many ways you can reduce impact or help restore the Earth, even in the local scale. And definitely, at least for urban farming in Hong Kong, I know it has been really become popular in Hong Kong, and people do it as a hobby or as a way of helping the environment. And I don't think that there are no actions too small. I think some of us maybe work in think tank or work in government, and you can do more systemic change. And for those of us who might not directly involved in the sector, there are ways you can do sustainable living as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Jody, and good morning to you. I hope you meet some friends here in Hong Kong, and yeah. So Fiona, any last thing you want to say before we close today?
Nothing special for me, but happy Earth Day, everyone. And maybe just to wrap this up, tell us how you're celebrating Earth Day in the chat, or you can shout out in one sentence if you want to. I can start first. I do this quite often, but I had like a vegan burger for dinner, just for formality. I didn't eat meat today.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I know it's across the world, and it's you will get the recording in the deck. And we do a lot of this talk here at Encompass. If you go to our YouTube channel, we did on circular economy, we did some thinking, we did climate, and we want to be as education as possible. And also, yeah, and if you don't mind, it will be good to have this memory with all of you. If you can turn on your camera and we can maybe take a quick screen cap, it will be good memory for us. It's good to see faces. Some of you are turning on. Yes, I saw Sybil, I saw Hillary. I'm seeing Lorna. Happy Earth Day, and hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm planning for diving this Sunday. I saw Paul. Yes, it's good to see faces. It feels personal, and yeah.
Just finish at the gym. That's why.
That's very healthy.
Sorry.
Yeah, treating yourself well is also an important part of wellness and all that. So Fiona, are you taking a good picture?
Yes, so ready?
Make some sign, whatever sign you like. Birthday. Yay.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And expect an email from us tomorrow about recording in the slides. If you are a teacher or something, you want to use some of this material, please feel free to. If you are corporate, talk to me. We will solve something out. Okay, good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Take care.
And please stay safe and healthy.
Yep.
Bye. Happy Earth Day.
Goodbye from Corpus Christi,